The stars had always been quiet. For 300 years, humanity reached into the darkness of space, built stations on the moon, cities on Mars, and mining colonies in the asteroid belt. They searched for others. They sent signals. They waited. No one answered. Admiral Kang Taeho had spent 40 years in the United Earth Navy. He had fought pirates near Jupiter. He had stopped terrorists on Europa. He had seen the best and worst of humanity among the stars. But nothing prepared him for what appeared on his screens that morning. 3,000 ships materialized beyond the moon. They came from nowhere, folding space itself like paper. Each vessel was the size of a mountain. Their hulls shimmered with energy that Earth's scientists could not understand. In seconds, they formed a perfect sphere around the planet, blocking every escape route. Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the UESS Defiance, Earth's largest orbital command station. His crew of 200 officers stared at their screens in silence. Lieutenant Gina Oh, his youngest officer, was the first to speak. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through." The main screen flickered. A being of pure light appeared, its form shifting like flames frozen in time. When it spoke, its voice filled every speaker on Earth, every radio, every device capable of receiving sound. "Species designation: human. You have been selected for integration into the galactic hegemony. This is not a request. Disarm all weapons. Surrender your leaders. Accept peaceful integration. You have 6 hours to comply. Resistance is not expected. It has never occurred." The transmission ended. Taeho looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes. He felt it in his own chest. But he also saw something else. He saw anger. "Get me the president," he said. On Earth, in a bunker buried deep beneath Seoul, President Yoon Hana watched the same message. She was 62 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too much. Around her sat the Global Defense Council, 12 men and women who controlled humanity's military forces. General Park Seok slammed his fist on the table. "We can't fight them. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Our weapons would bounce off their shields like toys. So we surrender?" asked Admiral Ru Dae, commander of the Pacific Fleet. "We just hand over our world?" "We survive," said Minister Cho Yuna, head of diplomacy. "That's what matters. Every species in the galaxy surrendered to them. That's why they're still alive." Hannah listened to them argue. She listened to the fear in their voices. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived the Great Pacific War of 2089. She remembered the old woman's words: "We bend, but we do not break. We fall, but we rise again. This is what it means to be human." She raised her hand. The room went silent. "General Park," she said slowly, "tell me about Prometheus." The room grew colder. Several council members looked confused. But Park Seok understood. His face went pale. "Madam President, that project is classified beyond anything. I know what it is. I approved it 20 years ago. I'm asking you now, is it ready?" Park Seok took a deep breath. He looked at the confused faces around the table and back at the president. 47,000 warheads. Antimatter cores. Hidden in asteroid mining stations, lunar facilities, and orbital debris fields. The hegemony's scans think they're mining equipment and space junk. They have no idea. Minister Cho Yuna went white. Antimatter weapons? Those were banned by the Geneva Protocols. You told the United Nations those research stations were destroyed after the accidents. There were no accidents, said Hana. There were no failures. Every explosion, every tragedy, every budget overrun was a cover. We've been preparing for this day for 200 years. Preparing for what? Demanded Admiral Ru. for someone to come and tell us to kneel. The room erupted in arguments. Some called her insane. Some called her a war criminal. But General Park Seok stood and walked to the main display. He entered a code that only 4 people in the world knew. The screen changed. It showed the solar system, but different from any map they had seen. Thousands of red dots appeared around Jupiter, Saturn, in the asteroid belt, hidden behind the moon. Each dot was a weapons platform. Each platform carried hundreds of warheads. "The Prometheus Array," said Park Seok. "We built it in secret. We hid it in plain sight. And we prayed we would never need to use it." Admiral Rue stared at the screen. "Even with all this firepower, their shields are designed for conventional weapons," interrupted Dr. Beat Nari through a video link from the moon. She was the lead scientist of Prometheus, a woman who had dedicated her entire life to this secret. "We've studied every species the hegemony conquered. They all used the same types of weapons: lasers, plasma, kinetic rounds. No one ever used antimatter at this scale because no one was crazy enough to build 47,000 warheads." "Crazy?" said Minister Cho. "Determined," corrected President Hana. "We're not crazy. We're human." She stood and walked to the window that showed the bunker's artificial sky. "I'm not going to force anyone. If this council votes to surrender, I will respect that decision. But I want you to understand something. The hegemony has conquered 1,000 species. They've never lost. They've never faced resistance. They walk into systems, make demands, and watch civilizations kneel." She turned to face them. "They've never met humans. They don't know that we fought each other for 10,000 years before we learned to fight together. They don't know that we survived ice ages, plagues, nuclear wars, and climate collapse. They don't know that every time someone tried to conquer us, we burned their empires to the ground." Her voice hardened. "They came to our home. They threatened our children. They ordered us to surrender. And they gave us 6 hours. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We only need 4. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Kang Tae-ho received the order 1 hour later. He read it twice to make sure he understood. Then he looked at Lieutenant Gina Oh. "Contact the hegemony. Tell them we need more time to prepare our surrender. Tell them we're scared and confused. Tell them whatever they want to hear." Gina nodded and opened the channel. Tae-ho walked to the observation window and stared at the alien fleet. 3,000 ships. Millions of soldiers. Technology that could crack planets. "You should have done your research," he whispered. "You should have learned who we are." In the distance, hidden among the stars, 47,000 weapons waited in the darkness. And humanity began to prepare not for surrender, but for war. The hegemony's ambassador accepted humanity's request for more time with something like amusement. The crystalline being had done this 1,000 times before. Every species asked for more time. They wanted to say goodbye to their loved ones, to pray to their gods, to cry over what they were losing. It made no difference. The result was always the same. 12 additional hours, the ambassador broadcast to Earth. Use them wisely. Prepare your people for a new life under hegemony guidance. We are not cruel. We simply require obedience. On the bridge of the U-East Defiance, Admiral Kang Tae-ho closed the channel and turned to his crew. They bought it. Now we have 18 hours total. Let's make every second count. Across the solar system, humanity moved with a speed and coordination that would have shocked any observer. But there were no observers. The hegemony had scanned Earth's systems and found what they expected: primitive ships, basic weapons, and a species completely unprepared for galactic war. They did not look deeper. They never needed to. Captain Shin Woo commanded the deployment operation from a hidden base inside. Asteroid 433 Eros. He was a quiet man with steady hands and a mind for logistics. For the past 15 years, he had managed what everyone called the Mining Coordination Center. In reality, he commanded the largest secret weapons network in human history. "All stations report," he said into his communicator dot. The responses came from across the solar system. Jupiter Station confirmed 3,200 warheads online. Saturn Ring Platform reported 2,800 ready. The lunar array, hidden beneath Mare Tranquillitatis, had 8,000 weapons armed and waiting. Dozens of smaller installations checked in from the asteroid belt, from the moons of Neptune, from places the hegemony had dismissed as worthless rock. Total count, 47,000. 216 antimatter warheads, reported his second officer. Kwang Myra, all systems green. Shin Wu allowed himself a small smile. 20 years of work. 20 years of secrecy. 20 years of pretending to be nothing more than a mining coordinator while building humanity's sword in the darkness. "Begin final positioning," he ordered. "Silent running. No emissions. Make us look like space debris." Thousands of pods detached from their hiding spots and drifted toward the hegemony fleet. They moved slowly, using only tiny bursts of compressed gas for propulsion. To the alien sensors, they appeared to be exactly what they pretended to be: fragments of rock, pieces of old satellites, the natural garbage of a spacefaring civilization. The hegemony did not give them a second look. On the moon, Dr. Beatnari worked without sleep. Her team of 50 scientists monitored every warhead, checked every targeting calculation, and ran simulation after simulation. They had one chance. If even 10% of the weapons failed, the hegemony would survive long enough to retaliate. Earth would burn. "The antimatter containment is stable," reported her assistant. Young engineer Han Gi-Te. "But some of the older warheads are showing stress fractures in their magnetic bottles. If we launch them too hard, they'll explode before reaching their targets," finished Nari. "I know. Flag the unstable ones. We'll use them for close-range detonations." Gi-Te stared at her. "Close range? The pilots won't survive." "I know that, too." Nari's voice was flat, empty of emotion. She had made peace with what this day would cost. "Flag them. Let the pilots volunteer." She walked away before he could see the tears in her eyes. On Earth, the deception continued. News networks broadcast footage of crying. Families preparing for relocation. Government officials made speeches, accepting the hegemony's generous offer of integration. Religious leaders called for calm and peaceful acceptance. It was all fake. Every word, every image, every tear was carefully planned. Behind the scenes, 2 billion people moved into underground shelters built over decades. The shelters had been called earthquake preparedness centers and climate emergency bunkers. Their true purpose had always been this moment. President Yoon Hana watched the operation from her bunker. Beside her, General Park Seok coordinated the military response while Minister Cho Yuna managed the civilian evacuation. 80% of the population is underground, reported Cho. The remaining 20% are in remote areas. We've distributed radiation medication and emergency supplies. Good, said Hana. What about the surface? Empty cities. Automated systems running to maintain the illusion of normal activity. If the hegemony scans us, they'll see people going about their lives. Hana nodded. The deception was holding, but she knew it couldn't last forever. How long until they realize we're not actually preparing to surrender? Park Seok checked his displays. Unknown. They've never faced a species that lied to them. Their protocols assume compliance. But eventually, They'll send inspection teams. When they find empty cities and underground bunkers, they'll know. Then we need to hit them before that happens. The hours passed slowly. On the UES Defiance, Lieutenant Gina O monitored hegemony communications. The aliens were discussing humanity with the casual tone of farmers discussing cattle. They talked about resource extraction, population management, genetic compatibility. They discussed which humans would be useful as workers and which would be processed. Gina felt sick. She shared the recordings with Admiral Tejo. "They don't see us as people," she said quietly. "We're just resources to them." Tejo listened to the recordings without expression. When they finished, he looked at his young officer. "They've done this to 1,000 species. They've crushed 1,000 civilizations. They think the galaxy belongs to them because no one ever told them otherwise." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "In a few hours, we're going to teach them something new. We're going to teach them that the universe is not theirs, that some species would rather die fighting than live on their knees, that humans are not cattle to be processed." Gina straightened her spine. "What do you need me to do, sir?" "Run the targeting calculations one more time. Make sure every warhead knows exactly where it's going. When we launch, I want zero margin for error." "Yes, sir." She returned to her station and began working. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for battle. They checked weapons, verified systems, and said quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. In the darkness of space, 47,000 warheads drifted ever closer to the hegemony fleet. The aliens remained unaware. They continued their discussions about harvesting Earth's resources and integrating its population. They talked about peace. They talked about order. They talked about the natural superiority of the hegemony over all lesser species. They had no idea that humanity had never been conquered, that humans had spent 10,000 years killing each other and had gotten very, very good at it, that when faced with extinction, humans didn't pray for mercy. They prepared for war, and war was coming. Hour 17. 1 hour remained before humanity was supposed to surrender. Admiral Kang Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the U's Defiance and watched the hegemony fleet on his screen. 3,000 ships hung in space like a wall of steel and light. Their weapons could glass entire continents. Their shields could stop nuclear explosions. They were the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. And they had no idea what was about to happen. "All stations report ready," said Lieutenant Gina O. Her voice was steady, but Tae-ho could see her hands shaking. She was 24 years old. If this failed, she would never see 25. Weapons array? 47,000 warheads in position. Final targeting confirmed. Antimatter containment stable on 96% of units. The other 4%? Gina paused. "Commander Yusun has volunteered his squadron for close-range delivery. They know the risks." Tae-ho closed his eyes for a moment. Sung was his nephew. They had eaten dinner together last month. Sung had talked about buying a house on Mars, about starting a family. "Understood," said Tae-ho. "Connect me to all commands." His voice went out to every ship, every station, every hidden weapons platform in the solar system. Millions of soldiers, scientists, and support staff heard him speak. "This is Admiral Kang Tae-ho. In approximately 50 minutes, we will engage the hegemony fleet. Many of us will not survive. But if we succeed, humanity will remain free. Our children will grow up under their own sky, not as slaves in an alien empire." He paused. "I won't lie to you. Our odds are not good. But neither were our odds when we climbed down from the trees. Neither were our odds when we crossed oceans in wooden boats or reached for the stars in tin cans filled with explosives. We have always been a species of survivors. Today, we prove it once more. Good luck, and may we meet again." The channel closed. On Earth, President Yoon Hana sat in her bunker with her eyes fixed on the main display. Beside her, General Park Seok coordinated the final preparations. Minister Cho Yuna held a phone connected to world leaders in other bunkers. Evacuation complete, reported Cho. 94% of the population is underground. Surface cities are empty. The hegemony is requesting our formal surrender broadcast, said a communications officer. They're getting impatient. Hannah stood. Then let's give them our answer. She walked to the broadcast console and activated it. Her face appeared on every screen on Earth and in space. The hegemony picked up the signal as well. The crystalline ambassador watched with mild curiosity. People of Earth, said Hana, and visitors to our system. You came here expecting to find a species ready to surrender. You came expecting fear and submission. You were wrong. She looked directly into the camera. We are humanity. We survived ice ages with fire and stone tools. We conquered diseases that killed millions. We split the atom and walked on the moon. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. And we do not forgive those who threaten our home. Her voice hardened. You have one chance to leave our system. Take it, or face the consequences. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the hegemony's response came. You dare threaten us? Foolish creatures. We have destroyed species far greater than yours. Your defiance changes nothing. Prepare to be disciplined. The alien ships began to move. Weapons powered up. Targeting systems locked onto Earth cities. Admiral Teo watched them come. They're charging weapons. Estimated time to firing range, 3 minutes. He looked at his crew. Execute Prometheus. Gina O pressed a single button. Across the solar system, 47,000 warheads activated simultaneously. Their engines flared to life. They accelerated toward the hegemony fleet at speeds that would have killed any human pilot. The first wave hit the alien ships in 6 seconds. The hegemony's shields flickered. They were designed to stop plasma bolts and laser beams, not concentrated antimatter explosions. The first 100 warheads created a chain reaction that overwhelmed the outermost ship's defenses. Their hulls cracked. Their reactors failed. They died in silence. First wave impact, reported Gina. 12 enemy ships destroyed. 300 damaged. Continue firing. The second wave hit 4 seconds later. This time, the hegemony tried to respond. Their point defense weapons activated, shooting down warheads by the dozen. But there were too many. For every warhead they destroyed, 10 more got through. Commander Yu Sung led his squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship carried the unstable warheads, the ones that couldn't survive a long-range launch. He knew he wasn't coming back. All pilots, target the flagship, he said calmly. Make every shot count. His squadron dove through a storm of alien fire. Ships exploded around him. Pilots died screaming. But they kept going. Sung's targeting computer locked onto the hegemony flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon. He could see the crystalline ambassador's chambers through his sensors. The being that had demanded humanity's surrender was watching the battle with something like confusion. For Earth, whispered Sung. He launched his warheads at point-blank range and followed them in. The flagship's shields collapsed. The antimatter detonation turned the vessel into a miniature sun. Sung and his squadron vanished in the light. On the Defiance, Admiral Teo watched the flagship die. Status report. Enemy flagship destroyed, said Gina. Her voice cracked. Commander Sung's squadron. No survivors. Teo gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. Continue the attack. Don't let his Ath be meaningless. The third, fourth, and fifth waves hit the hegemony fleet in rapid succession. The aliens tried to retreat, but humanity's weapons were everywhere. Warheads emerged from asteroid fields, from behind moons, from debris clouds that had seemed like garbage dot. The hegemony had never faced an enemy like this. Their protocols assumed surrender. Their tactics assumed compliance. They had no response to an enemy that would rather die than kneel dot in exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. 3,000 alien warships became 3,000 expanding clouds of debris. Admiral Tae-ho stared at the empty space where the fleet had been. Confirm results. Gina checked her sensors 3 times before answering. Enemy fleet destroyed. No survivors detected. Debris field expanding. We won, sir. Silence fell over the bridge. Then someone started crying. Someone else started laughing. Officers hugged each other. A few fell to their knees. Tae-ho walked to the observation window and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, more hegemony ships were waiting. More enemies would come. This battle was over, but the war had just begun. Send a message to Earth, he said quietly. Tell them the sky is clear. On Earth, President Hana received the news. She sat in silence for a long moment, then spoke a single sentence. Bring our people home, and prepare for what comes next. Humanity had won its first battle, but the galaxy was vast, and the hegemony would not forgive this insult. The real war was just beginning. The news of the hegemony fleet's destruction reached their home systems within hours. Faster-than-light communication carried the report across 1,000 star systems. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the masters of the galaxy felt an emotion they had almost forgotten. Fear. In the Grand Palace on their capital world. The Hegemony Council gathered to watch the recordings. They saw their mighty fleet reduced to scattered atoms. They saw their flagship consumed by fire. They saw the crystalline ambassador die without understanding what had happened. This is impossible, said the eldest council member. No primitive species has ever resisted. No one has ever fought back. The humans did more than fight back, replied another. They won. Silence filled the chamber. For 10,000 years, the hegemony had conquered through intimidation alone. They arrived with overwhelming force, made demands, and watched civilization surrender. They had forgotten what war actually looked like. Now they remembered. On Earth, the celebrations lasted 3 days. People emerged from their underground shelters and looked up at a sky free of alien ships. They hugged strangers on the streets. They cried and laughed and drank until they couldn't stand. But President Yoon Hana did not celebrate. She sat in her office with Admiral Kang Tae-ho and General Park Seok, staring at the intelligence reports that Dr. Beek Nari had extracted from the alien wreckage. They'll come back, said Hana. It was not a question. Yes, confirmed Nari through the video link from her lunar laboratory. The hegemony controls over 1,000 systems. They have millions of ships. What we destroyed was a single expeditionary fleet, nothing more. How long until they send another? Nari hesitated. Based on their communication protocols, they're already mobilizing. A second fleet could arrive within 18 months. This one will be larger. Much larger. Tae-ho studied the data on his tablet. They've conquered 1,000 species because no one ever fought back. They've never experienced actual warfare. Their tactics are based on intimidation, not combat. But they'll learn, said Park Seok. They'll study what we did and adapt. The next fleet will be prepared for our weapons. Hannah stood and walked to the window. Outside, people were still celebrating. They didn't know how temporary their victory was. They didn't know that the real storm was still coming. Then we don't wait for them, she said quietly. The room went silent. Madam President? Asked Tae-ho. Hannah turned to face them. The hegemony has spent 10,000 years conquering others. They've never had to defend their own territory. They've never faced an enemy that attacked them. Her eyes hardened. We change that. We take the war to them. Park Seok shook his head. With respect, ma'am, we don't have the capability. We don't have faster-than-light travel. We can't reach their systems. We didn't have antimatter weapons either, replied Hana. Until we built them. Dr. Beak, can we reverse engineer their technology? Nari's face appeared on the screen, exhausted but excited. We've already started. Their FTL drives are based on principles we theorized, but never tested. With the intact samples from the wreckage, I believe we can build our own within 6 months. And weapons? Their shields were designed for conventional attacks. Now that we understand how they work, we can design weapons specifically to counter them. Give me a year, and I'll give you tools that make the Prometheus array look like fireworks. Hana nodded slowly. Admiral Tejo, what about ships? The Admiral's expression shifted. He had been waiting for this question. Project Atlas, he said. 300 warships hidden in the construction facilities around Jupiter. The hegemony thought they were industrial stations. They're actually shipyards. The ships are 90% complete. You built a secret fleet? Humanity has been preparing for this day for 200 years, ma'am. The Prometheus array was just the sword. Project Atlas is the army. 6 months later, humanity's first FTO-capable ship emerged from the Jupiter shipyards. They called it the UES Vengeance. Admiral Park Jin, commander of the newly formed Second Fleet, stood on its bridge as the FTL drive activated. Space folded around the ship like a curtain being pulled aside. Stars blurred and shifted. In an instant, they were light years away from Earth. FTL jump successful, reported his navigator, Lieutenant Kwan Mera. We're in the hegemony's outer territories. Park Jin looked at the star map. Ahead of them lay a hegemony supply depot, a massive station that fueled their fleets as they moved across the galaxy. It was defended by 50 warships. They don't know we can reach them, said Park Jin. Let's introduce ourselves. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human weapons, designed specifically to penetrate hegemony shields, tore through the alien defenses. The supply depot exploded in a fireball, visible from neighboring star systems. News of the attack spread faster than the debris. The humans were coming. Over the following months, humanity struck again and again. They hit military bases, destroyed communication relays, and ambushed patrol fleets. They never attacked civilian targets, only military ones. They wanted the hegemony to understand something important. This was not terrorism. This was war. And humans knew how to wage war better than anyone. On the hegemony's capital world, panic spread among the ruling class. For the first time in history, subject species began to question their masters. If tiny Earth could defeat the mighty hegemony, perhaps freedom was possible. Rebellion sparked across a dozen systems. President Hana made a galaxy-wide broadcast. Her face transmitted to every corner of hegemony space. To the species conquered by the hegemony, you are not alone. Humanity stands with you. We know what it means to be told to kneel, to surrender, to accept your place under someone else's boot. We refused. You can refuse too. She paused, letting her words sink in. And to the hegemony itself, you came to our home. You demanded our submission. You threatened our children. Now we're coming to yours. You have two choices. Release every species you've conquered and surrender your military forces. Or watch everything you built burn. Her voice hardened. You have 1 year to decide. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched it replay. Some felt hope for the first time in their lives. Others felt terror that the hegemony had ruled the galaxy for for 10,000 years. They had never faced an enemy like humanity. They had never faced an enemy that refused to surrender, that attacked instead of defended, that turned their own tactics against them. They had ordered peace. Humanity had answered with fire. The galaxy would never be the same. 10 years had passed since the day the hegemony arrived at Earth. Admiral Kong Tuho stood on the bridge of the U.S. Humanity's Answer, the largest warship ever built by human hands. Around him, a fleet of 2,000 vessels orbited the hegemony's capital world. The same beings who had once demanded humanity's surrender now broadcast pleas for mercy on every frequency. "Admiral," said Captain Gina, no longer a lieutenant, but a decorated officer with gray streaks in her hair. "The Hegemony Council is requesting to speak with you." Tae-ho nodded. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life. The Hegemony Council appeared, their crystalline forms dim and flickering. They had aged somehow. The confidence that had once radiated from them was gone, replaced by something broken. "Human Admiral," said the eldest council member, "we offer our complete surrender. We will release all conquered species. We will disarm our military. We will accept whatever terms you demand. Please, stop." Tae-ho studied them for a long moment. He thought about Commander Yu Sung, who had died in the first battle. He thought about the millions of humans who had given their lives in the decade of war that followed. He thought about the thousands of alien species who had suffered under hegemony rule for 10,000 years. "Your surrender is accepted," he said finally. "But peace is not my gift to give. That belongs to those you wronged." 3 days later, the Galactic Assembly met for the first time. Representatives from over 300 species gathered on a space station orbiting Earth. They came in ships of every shape and size, from vessels of living crystal to hulls of woven metal. Many of them had never traveled freely before. Many of them had never seen beings from other worlds, as equals. Ambassador Yoon Mina, daughter of the late President Hana, who had passed away 2 years earlier, addressed the assembly. She was young, only 34, but she carried herself with her mother's strength. "Honored representatives," she began, "we gather here not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. The hegemony ruled through fear. They believed that peace meant silence, that order meant obedience, that civilization meant submission. They were wrong." She looked around the vast chamber at the faces watching her. Beings of light sat beside creatures of stone. Entities that existed as pure thought floated near species that communicated through color. True peace is not the absence of weapons. True peace is the presence of justice. The hegemony understood only the first kind. We offer you the second. She gestured to the charter displayed behind her. The Terran Alliance does not seek to replace one empire with another. We offer partnership, not domination. We offer protection, not threats. We offer a chance to build something new, something better than what came before. A being of living fire rose to speak. Humanity destroyed the greatest military force in galactic history. Why should we believe you won't simply become the new hegemony? Mina smiled. Because we know what it feels like to have someone stand over us and demand our submission. We know what it feels like to be told we are small and weak and worthless. We refused to accept that. We fought back. And now we offer the same choice to all of you. She spread her arms. Join us, not as subjects, but as partners. Together, we will build a galaxy where no species has to kneel, where no civilization has to surrender, where every being can look up at the stars and know they are free. The vote was unanimous. On Earth, General Park Seok retired to a small house in the countryside. He had seen enough war. He had built enough weapons. Now he wanted only to tend his garden and watch the sun set over mountains that had stood for millions of years. Reporter came to interview him one afternoon. She asked if humanity had been too aggressive, too violent, too quick to wage war. Park Seok poured tea and considered the question. The hegemony conquered 1,000 species without ever fighting a real war, he said slowly. They believed that civilization meant surrender, that progress meant submission, that peace meant accepting your place under someone else's rule. He looked out at his garden, at the flowers blooming in the afternoon light. Humanity disagreed. We've spent 10,000 years fighting each other. We've waged wars over land, over resources, over ideas. We've killed millions of our own kind. This is not something to be proud of. He paused. But it taught us something important. It taught us that some things are worth fighting for. That freedom is not given. It is taken. It is defended. It is earned. The reporter asked another question. Do you think there will ever be true peace? Park Seok smiled sadly. Peace is not a destination. It's a process. It requires constant work, constant vigilance, constant willingness to stand up against those who would take it away. He looked up at the sky, where human ships and alien vessels now traveled together. The hegemony ordered peace. They thought that meant silence. They thought that meant submission. They thought that meant the end of conflict. He shook his head. They were wrong. Peace is not the end of struggle. Peace is the struggle itself, the endless effort to build something better, to protect something precious, to stand against the darkness and say, not here, not today, not ever. The reporter thanked him and left. Park Seok returned to his garden. High above Earth, Admiral Teo received orders for a new mission. Pirates had been attacking trade routes in a distant sector. The young Galactic Alliance needed protection. He assembled his crew. Most were human, but many were not. Beings from a dozen species served alongside each other, united by a common purpose. We have work to do, said Teo. Let's get moving. The UES Humanity's answer turned toward the stars and engaged its engines. In the grand history of the galaxy, the human hegemony war would be remembered as a turning point. The moment when a small species on a tiny world changed everything. The moment when someone finally said no. But for the humans who lived it, it was simpler than that. It was survival. It was defiance. It was the refusal to accept someone else's definition of peace. The hegemony had ordered peace. Humanity had answered with missiles. And in doing so, they had created something new. Not just an alliance of free species. Not just a military victory. Something deeper. Something more important. They had created hope. In every corner of the galaxy. Beings looked up at the stars and knew that they were not alone. That freedom was possible. That the darkness could be pushed back. All because one small species on a blue planet had been crazy enough to fight back. All because humanity had refused to kneel.